Let's bring in Peter King, Football Morning in America, must-read column for any football fan, and also contributor to NBCSports.com. Pete, thanks for joining us. How would you best describe the atmosphere last night?
Surprisingly, 100% loving. I thought the fans did a fabulous job I was down on the field, Dan. It started raining very lightly at 7:29 in Foxborough. At 7:30, Tom Brady walked out to a great, great ovation. And, I had been around New England a couple of weeks ago, and there's some people in New England, and I think quite a few of them, who aren't in love with Tom Brady the way they used to be. But fans really showed him love. And then I thought it was great. The first time that the Tampa Bay offensive unit came on the field, there were thunderous boos in the stadium, which is exactly how you should treat a visiting team, no matter whether Tom Brady's the quarterback or Milt Plum is. So I thought the scene was really cool last night. The other thing, Dan, that crowd stood for 3.5 hours. It was interesting to see.
Who was the big winner last night? And if I said Brady, Belichick, Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. I mean, Dan, imagine what could he be thinking about? Look, his life changed forever 6 months ago when he had nothing to do with it being other than the fact he was a good quarterback. He didn't hold a gun to anybody's head and say, draft me. Bill Belichick drafted him, and he came into this maelstrom, this Brady versus Belichick maelstrom. And last night he handled the pressure. And Dan, he took 3 or 4 shots last night. Yeah. Big shots. And he just came back and he kept dunking all over the field. 19 completions in a row, obviously, at one point. Mac Jones, Dan, you know what happened last night? Both teams won that game because the Bucs survived a tough road game against a guy who's got the answers to all of the tests in Bill Belichick. The Bucs survived. They have major injury problems. Somehow they've got to limp through these games and find ways to win while some of these defensive players get healthy and they don't have to play Richard Sherman every snap. And so they've got to figure out a way. They did for one night. So the Bucs are 3-1. And as Brady told me before he got on the bus to leave the stadium, he goes, listen, that's all that matters. Now what matters is me falling asleep on the plane so that when I wake up in the morning, we can worry about trying to be 4-1 next week.
I was surprised at the 4th and 3 call.
Me too.
If Tom Brady's your quarterback, Bill Belichick is not going to settle for a 56-yard field goal in that kind of weather, right?
But what was weird about it, Dan, is, and I just kept thinking about this, all right? So I don't know what Nick Foles, because they hide all their injuries, but word was last night that Nick Foles' plant leg is not 100%. It was raining hard at that point. And you're asking him to make a 56-yard field goal? I mean, the guy almost did it. He stoinked it. But anyway, I just thought I would much rather, with a minute to go in the game, I would much rather have tried for the first down with Mac Jones. And if you get the first down, then you're in very makeable field goal position. So I was surprised, and I thought it was the wrong call by Belichick.
Okay, but also factor this in. Let's say you make the field goal. I've given Brady 55 seconds, 2 timeouts. Didn't make sense at all. Even if you make it, Brady can still beat you. Why not go for it on 4th and 3? And Mac Jones had been pretty good. He had 19 in a row, had a couple incompletions, and then he had a completion. And I just thought it would have been one of those moments in front of Brady. Not that Belichick wants to do this, but you'd be saying to your team and Mac Jones, hey, I trust you. Go out there and win that. Go out and win that game.
I don't think it's that big a deal for Mac Jones to have the coach say, "Hey, I trust you." He hasn't really earned it yet, honestly. So, but you're right. The bigger issue is you're leaving Brady what would have been about 55 seconds and 2 timeouts to go, 35 yards to kick another, a twin winning field goal. I don't
Yeah, I
know. It
didn't
was
like
a
it.
mistake, I
Yeah.
thought.
We're talking to Peter King. His column, Football Morning in America, is available right now. What do the Steelers do?
I'll tell you, Dan, I didn't see their game yesterday, but I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers are in trouble. And I think the main trouble comes from the simple fact that, okay, what did the Pittsburgh Steelers do in this offseason? What they did in this offseason was say, we understand we've got an old quarterback and we understand we don't have a mobile quarterback, but I'll tell you what we're going to do this year. We are going to help Ben Roethlisberger by giving him a running game and by, changing up the offensive line. Well, last year, and I think I'm right in saying this, Dan, last year, they were horrible running the ball, 3.6, 3.7 a carry, whatever. Well, what are they this year? They draft a running back number 1 overall, Najee Harris. And as we look at the numbers this morning, they are 3.3 yards a carry this year. They're running it worse than they ran it last year. So that plus the fact, hey, Dan, this team for 3 consecutive weeks has not broken 17 points. They've not scored over 17. So you were asking, admittedly, what's a good defense? You're asking a good defense to basically play games in the teens all year. That is simply not sustainable.
The Niners drafted Trey Lance, I think, in part because Jimmy Garoppolo can't stay healthy. And now you have this scenario playing out where he's not healthy. Now Trey Lance comes in. How do you think this plays out this year? Even though Garoppolo has played pretty well, I think, by all accounts.
I mean, Dan, there's a reason why Jimmy Garoppolo was heartbroken when the 49ers called him in March and basically said, we're probably going to take a quarterback. And he's heartbroken because this was his team and he thought that they could recreate 2019 in 2021 and play great again. But Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, Jed York, they basically, without ever saying it, I don't even think they would say it to many people off the record, but how can you trust a quarterback who's been hurt as much as Jimmy Garoppolo has, who's played 23 of the previous 48 regular season games? There's no way they could trust him. And I understand Jimmy Garoppolo once more is heartbroken after getting hurt again, but this is the reason why they decided to draft a quarterback 3rd overall. Now, I'd say 2 things about Trey Lance that interest me right now. Number one, in his limited time playing, both as a runner and a thrower, he has not turned the ball over yet, and he's played a little bit in every one of the games so far. So that is encouraging. And I think the second thing is he's going to be able to get out on the edge. And I'm not saying he's going to play Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray football, but I am saying that I think he's going to be able to make more plays with his legs than Garoppolo did. And by the way, I forget who I listened to this morning very early when I was coming back to the hotel after the game last night, but they said, okay, now if you can get something for Garoppolo before the trading deadline, go ahead and do it. And I said, no. You keep your depth at quarterback when you think you're a contending team. And so the 49ers basically are going to try to win with Lance and hope that he can prove over the next few weeks that he's the quarterback of the future. If not, Shanahan will have no problem going back to Garoppolo.
Well, if Garoppolo's heart is broken, that's just another injury for him, though, Pete.
Yeah, he's on the injury report this week with parentheses, broken heart, end of parentheses.
The Arizona Cardinals go into L.A. and they rough up the Rams and that great defense. Is it time to climb on the Arizona bandwagon?
Yesterday really, I think, became convincing that you have to climb on their bandwagon. The two things about that game that I found so interesting. Number one, for the third straight week, Kyler Murray, who was supposed to be a good thrower, but not necessarily a pinpoint thrower, is now the first quarterback in the long history of the Cardinals franchise, Chicago, St. Louis, Arizona, to have 3 straight games of 75% completions. So that's one thing. But I think the other part of this is when the Arizona Cardinals hired Cliff Kingsbury, one of the things that they said is, look, this is not a usual NFL offense, but the one thing that this offense will do is this offense will run the ball. And so far this year, look, they've passed it just great, but they still run the ball very, very well. Dan, they're running it 31 times a game. And that's a lot of runs in today's football. So if they're running it 31 times a game and they have a quarterback playing as well as Kyler Murray and they're scoring in the 30s every week, it's going to be a tough team to beat.
Is Dallas a running team now?
No. Dallas is just like Arizona. Dallas, to me, is a versatile team who can pull anything out of its bag of tricks any week. And, the Cowboys, to me, this is the kind of team they always wanted to be. That in some week, if they needed to throw it 45 times, they could. If they needed to run it, if they need to run it 40 times, they can do that too. And I think it also helps, especially in a 17-game season, to have a two-headed rushing monster, like Elliott and Pollard give you.
Yeah, I agree. I mentioned this at the top of the show. I wonder if those questions to Brian Flores in Miami start to heat up a little bit with Deshaun Watson. And I know Brian Flores is not going to answer it, but I don't know. It just feels like losing that game. Jacoby Brissett against a banged-up Colts team. You're at home. You lose by double digits. Do you think that that trade talk starts to heat up at all this week?
I think it depends on how hot it gets for Flores and for Chris Greer. I think the Miami Dolphins at 1-3, especially with a double-digit loss to a winless team at home, they can't, no matter who plays quarterback for them, they're not playing well on offense. Dan, I think that as much as you never want to make a panic move, and I don't suggest that they make this panic move. I think Stephen Ross is going to start to get very impatient very soon.
Yeah, I agree. Great stuff as always, Pete. Thank you again for joining us, and safe travels.
Thanks a lot, Dan. You take care.
That's Peter King, Football Morning in America, NBCSports.com. And sleep deprived, I'm sure.